Here's a joke. China, Saudi Arabia and Iran all walk into not a bar, but into a diplomatic meeting. What do you get? Today we talk about a very important shift in the geopolitics of the Middle East that you probably have not heard of and probably won't. Western legacy media has little to no interest in the Middle East, unless, of course, some Muslim has done something crazy, in which case they follow the story, as of course it fits their bias perfectly. Muslims could be Iranian or Saudi or anything really, it doesn't matter as long as they're Muslim. But I'm not Western legacy media, so let me give you the rundown on how the Middle East and the dynamics between the regional powers there are set to change. Now, I remind you, this is a geopolitics channel, so I'm not here attacking the Saudi government. I'm saying this in advance. I'm not here attacking the Saudi government for their inaction on the Israel-Palestine conflict or the genocide in Gaza. I could. It's very easy. The Saudi citizens themselves have been very upset at the inaction of the kingdom, or the kingdom's government, but I'm not here to be an activist. Get that somewhere else, please. When you come here, I'll help you understand why things are going the way they are going and what we can expect in the future. I'm here for the analysis. To each their own, everyone has a part to play, so I'm not saying activism is useless, but it's not for me to make comments on for the time being. So what I want to talk about today is this. Iran and Saudi Arabia, bitter rivals these last few decades, are set now to work closer together than ever before, but you won't hear about it. So let me give you an outline and a rundown in this post, and hopefully you will be set for a renewed understanding of the geopolitical dynamics in that region between these two regional powers. It's a rivalry that may turn into a bond of brotherhood in the coming years, and this is why. Supported through mediation by the Titan of the East, the People's Republic of China, these two are set to find it's mutually beneficial to be on the same side rather than be opposed and rivals that play off each other's differences, such as the sect. So Iran being Shia and Saudi being Sunni. So let's start off with Iran, right? It's very simple for Iran. The Islamic Revolution pushed the Iranian state out of alignment with the US. Before the revolution, they had a Shah who ruled Iran and was very chummy with the US, very friendly. But afterwards, after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, a Shia religious revolution, not so much. And even to this day, of course, as I'm sure you know, the US is very hostile towards the Iranian state in its current form, and vice versa. Iran is very hostile towards the US. So when China comes along with investments, military advancements and technology transfers on offer, Iran is very happy to align themselves with the Titan of the East, the rising star, especially as China doesn't see itself as the world's morality police like the US does. They have a famous policy, in fact, of non-interference with states they economically cooperate with. Whereas the US policy is more like interference literally whenever we benefit from it or feel like it. Completely our choice. Now, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. The kingdom is in a unique situation. It always has been. It's a very strict Muslim state, a Sunni Muslim state, with the majority of its populace following very traditional, very closely to the tenets of Islam. The prevailing interpretation of Islam in Saudi Arabia is among the strictest interpretations of any Muslim country on earth. And yet, the Saudi government is closely aligned with the United States. They have been for decades. Nothing about the US state is particularly Orthodox Muslim, of course, so the alliance is a unique one. Saudi is not even a democracy, it's a monarchy, right? So very out of alignment considering their values, but it works because it's a economic and military strategic partnership. In truth, Saudi has relied heavily on the United States with US tech, US money, US military bases in the country of Saudi Arabia. All of it cements the idea that Saudi is well within the American sphere of influence. But that's changing. As the US wants to pull out of every part on earth that's not the Pacific and East Asia, so they can deal with their great challenger to US global domination, China. As the US pulls out, their influence over, their hold over Saudi weakens. And the other Gulf states weaken, their hold over the Gulf states other than Saudi Arabia also weaken. Now, this weakening has coincided with China making itself a welcoming ally, both in military and economic partnerships to the Saudi kingdom. Now, the final catalyst that may trigger the optimal conditions for Saudi-Iran ties to strengthen, to come together, and for their rivalry to be shelved, Israel. specifically Israel in historic Palestine. It's been over 15 months, guys, and the genocide in Gaza has left the Israeli state the most detested, the most hated nation in the region in terms of sentiment of the general masses. The populations of Saudi Arabia and Iran both are clamoring for their governments to do more, or at least not to aid the Israelis in any way possible, as Israel carries out what most Arabs and Iranians both consider to be unforgivable crimes against humanity. Now, governments operate on political bucks, political currency. For Saudi Arabia, therefore, a nation moving out of the US sphere of influence, it stands to gain a lot. The government stands to gain a lot of political currency from promoting unity and cooperation with Iran. Its population of Muslims, the Saudi population of Muslims, are far more likely to respond positively to Iranian cooperation off the back of anti-Israeli sentiment than to cooperate and build closer ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel. The population is much more likely to be opposed to Saudi-Israeli relations improving than to be opposed to Saudi-Iranian relations improving. And previously, Saudi ties to the US relied on economic benefits. They aligned themselves with the US because it made economic sense. But the US is no longer the global superpower, and China has risen to match them. So the economic benefits may also lie in the East. And as green energy booms in the East, Saudi Arabia finds it more justifiable almost on all fronts: economic, domestic, population sentiment, military technology, to align itself with China and Iran and move away from its historic position as part of the Western Bloc. It was already on its way out of that sphere of influence, the American sphere of influence, and Israel's actions these last year and a bit in historic Palestine have only hurried the kingdom along faster. Now, there's a lot more to talk about for this one, but for now, we'll leave it here. It's been a decently detailed overview. I hope you've benefited, enjoyed it, and I welcome your comments, of course. And this will be something we talk a lot more about, because in the Middle East, there's arguably 3 regional powers. If you include Turkey playing a key role in the Middle East, then there's 4. The 3 powers are, other than Turkey, Saudi, Iran, and Israel. Israel, we know, is Western-backed. Iran, we know, is Eastern-backed, essentially. Saudi Arabia is in that unique shifting position. Turkey, arguably in another way, is also in that unique shifting position. Both moving away from NATO, away from American hegemony and being part of the US sphere of influence, moving more towards the Eastern anti-imperialistic, anti-West bloc, or a more isolationist or more regionally independent bloc. So there's a lot going on here that you might not see the headlines for, you might not hear the headlines, but suddenly it will slap you in the face with half 100 articles one day when the 2 states, Iran and Saudi Arabia, start making a lot more public noise in terms of their cooperation, and then you can come back and be like, oh yeah, we heard it from Mahfouz first. Anyway, see you on the next one.